farcical, so unpredictable, here on SNL Stats.
Yes, that is right. It is great to be here on another week of the SNL Stats Roundtable podcast. I am so happy to have these guests that are here with us this week on the show to cover everything from Nick Jonas's episode of SNL and really everything that's happened over the last 5 weeks. It was an incredible run over the last few weeks, and I can't wait to break it all down. Joining us first tonight, he is an SNL historian and archivist. He's been with us many times on the show, and it is always great to hear from him. James Stevens, how are you?
John, let's go slow. I've been hurt before. I walked into a sliding glass door today.
All right. Well, we're going to hear more about that as we move forward. Andy Hoglund is the recapper for Entertainment Weekly. He does articles for Vulture, and he's the creator of the SNL In Review experience, and he is an excellent guest. Andy, how are you?
John, I'm doing well. It is so great to see you again. I think I've said this before, but being on the SNL Stats podcast is like the show equivalent of appearing on Pardon the Interruption or Andy Cohen's show. So I'm thrilled to be back, and I appreciate you having me.
Yeah, it's always a pleasure to hear from you. And joining us for the first time, I'm so excited to have this guy on the show. I actually was a guest on his podcast, and you'll be able to hear that in the future. He is the host of the SNL Hall of Fame podcast. Jamie Dew, how you doing?
I am great. Really thrilled to be here. Long-time listener, first-time guest. Great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's so nice to hear from you, Jamie. And we want to get all of your SNL takes, but if you wouldn't mind giving us a little bit about your SNL origin story, how did you get into the show and how are you feeling about it now?
Oh, wow. It's been a long time. I would sneak out to watch SNL the first season that Lauren came back. I wasn't aware of that at the time. I wasn't aware of much of anything that was going on. But I remember seeing the commercial parody for You're Going to Hell. It was like framed like a beer commercial, and it was You're Going to Hell. And I remember that really stuck with me. So that was the Robert Downey Jr. and Randy Quaid year. The next season, though, I really got into the show and started watching it all the time. So I feel like I got into it just at like the perfect time because it took a year or so to find out where it needed to be and got there and just continued to get better and better and better as the years went on. I of course drifted away for a while in my 30s, but I came back to it probably when I was 35 or so, and I haven't stopped watching. As far as what it is now compared to what it was, I think it was, just such a big part of my adolescence and growing up. It's tough to top that now, but what I am enjoying is I've got an 11-year-old who watches it with me, and she really likes it. So that to me feels really cool because I had to sneak out to watch it when I was, 10 or 11, but she's getting to watch it with me. And there's something really neat and special about that.
Yeah, it's always really nice when you get to make SNL a family affair. So it's wonderful to hear from you, Jamie. Where we're going to start tonight, and I want to go around the panel and talk about really the last 5 episodes. I said something, if you didn't catch our live stream, we went live immediately after the Nick Jonas show with some of our super fans, and we broke it down and discussed our hot takes. But one of the things that I really felt looking at these 5 episodes was it kind of felt like there was 2 season 46s. Season 46A was everything that happened in the fall, and season 46B is everything that's happened in 2021. And I can't remember another season that has felt so different, pre the new year and post the new year. So I want to talk about these block of 5 and, really what worked and what didn't. So James, let me start with you. What did you like in this block of 5 episodes? Were there certain episodes you loved better than others? And give me your overall thoughts about everything.
Yeah, for sure. I think your take on kind of A and B makes a lot of sense. That's how it feels to me as well. what I like about these last 5 episodes here, the 2021 episodes, is it feels like, not that the cast wasn't having fun before, but it just seems like it's a little bit more, loose. Like it's almost like, back in the original era, the first 5 years, they sort of talked about the young people taking over the studio, and just running NBC while everybody else went home for the night. And it has a little bit of that kind of feeling and the energy. And then the other thing that seems to be running kind of, in tandem with the live episodes is they're kind of like behind the scenes Instagram, cast kind of camaraderie stuff that you're seeing. And it really shows up, I think, on screen too, within sketches. I mean, you can tell when people, I think it's true in any kind of, walk of life in a workplace environment where you can really tell when you're getting along with your colleagues. It just seems that everybody is, enjoying working together. And then the other thing outside of just the cast and the great energy that is showing up is there's been, for me, I've enjoyed sort of the departure from the political themes. Now, that's not to say that there isn't, timely references right now, but we're not being hit over the head with politics in terms of just like note for note, beat for beat, press conferences and things like that, and just the way that the show opens, cold open, for example, has just been refreshing to see a little bit more creativity, a little bit different take. And when you sit down and you're getting ready for it to start, you really don't know what you're in store for. Where back in the fall, you kind of knew, to a certain extent.
Yeah, it's such a good point, and I want to hit on a couple of things you just spoke about. And as we bring Andy in, one of the things you said was that the cast really enjoys working together, and like you said, you can see that through social media. I know that Colin Jost was on Seth Meyers' show last week, and one of the things that he spoke about was that the cast can't go out to the after parties, and they end up kind of spending time with each other at Studio 8H, whatever they can given COVID protocols. And he said, he kind of feels bad for the first year cast members because they don't know really what the SNL experience is like. But what I do know is that you're right, James, that it seems like it's bringing the cast together no matter how big the cast is. So, Andy, if you want to pick up on that point and also talk about your feelings about this block of 5 episodes.
Yeah, so I just want to totally co-sign and echo, James, what you just said, and John, your points as well, too. I think from a macro level, again, we're going to be kind of treading familiar turf here, but there's a few things going on. They're clearly navigating the parameters of this very strange set of circumstances that is, season 46 a lot better than they did in the fall. Whether that's their approach to COVID, whether it's as James just said, getting into a post-Trump political new normal, new reality. And then just generally, the cast energy that was just spoken about. It's a huge cast. Learning how to be one unit as best you can. Trying to be as organic as possible, and bringing that kind of looseness that James was just describing, which I think is manifesting in a couple different ways, including within the case of these last 5 episodes, you're really seeing that next generation talent kind of step up to the plate. We still see, Kate's there, Cecily's there, Adie Bryant's there, but you're really seeing, Ego, Chloe, they're being given chances to come to bat, and they're knocking it, against the green monster, so to speak. So I think that's from a macro level. Then from a more micro level, we're talking about a more improved cold open in a lot of respects. Their approach there, I think, has been enhanced, probably because it's not just Alec Baldwin, mugging as Trump. And then one last thing, just in terms of the trends and the themes that I was thinking about when John circulated the agenda, there has been a lot of strange Disney bestiality jokes lately. By my count, I'm not the SNL stats guy. That's John. I'm not the stats guy. But there's been 2 sketches where the premise is, what if we did something with Disney but added sex to it? And then Weekend Update, they did a joke about the Muppet Show and Gonzo having sex with Camilla, and I was like, God, like who is coming up with this stuff? So I just wanted to throw that out there, a little hand grenade. But from a very, very granular level, that's been something out that's emerged as a surprising trend. So there you go.
Yeah, we'll get to work on those stats for you, Andy, and I'll make sure to let you know. Excellent points. Let me bring in Jamie, who it's really we're getting your first thoughts, Jamie, on season 46 as a whole. But I do want to hear what you thought about this block of 5 episodes overall.
I think you really nailed it when you said season A and B, because to me, I feel like the show feels now like it should have felt in the fall. Coming into this season, I really thought this was going to be, a victory lap for our seniors and mega seniors. And, the juniors and sophomores and freshmen were going to eat up a lot more time. Instead, we've seen, we've definitely seen, like Andy said, the sophomores, Ego and Chloe and Bowen in particular, really firmly grabbing that brass ring. And I think the show is in great hands, as a result of that showing. But I think that that's what we should have ultimately got in the fall. But it's taken us this time together. I don't know whether it's a mixture of things, whether it's COVID or whether it was the election season or whether it was just trepidation on how to deal with this, bloated 20-person cast that, just to get through the credits, it takes 2 minutes. In particular with this last 5, the word that I have circled in my notebook is ensemble. Like I really feel like they're much more of an ensemble right now. You've got your featured players, your Kate McKinnon for sure, who is getting ample screen time, but you're seeing a lot of people beneath, and even those people that have been around for a while, like this newly reinvigorated Pete Davidson. I'm really enjoying him. I'm truly outside of Weekend Update. I've been waiting. Like I've been really waiting for him to appear, and he's appeared in spades this year. So I think that's really great. The last thing is it's interesting. There's almost an A and B in this block of 5 as well in terms of the live audience. The last 2 episodes, the live audience has cooked. They've been really great. This week wasn't as great as last week. That was just phenomenal. But I thought that the crowd really brought a lot to the show this week as well, whereas the first couple episodes, they were a little more on their hands.
Yeah, it's such a good point, and it's a great jumping off point for our next, part of this discussion, which is, James, I felt that there was, like Jamie just said, a little bit of a shift, and it did coincide almost with the audience. And I am curious, if there wasn't the Bridgerton fan audience last week and the Nick Jonas fans, this past weekend, maybe I wouldn't feel exactly the same. But I really did feel that the last 2 episodes, the quality of the show went up significantly. And I know we had coincidentally, James and Andy, you guys were on with us like earlier in the run of this 5. So it's great to get your opinions now later in the run if there's different. But I know that you both had praise for those first few episodes, the Krasinski, the Levy, the King. But for me, I really felt like high expectations coming out of the new year, and it didn't particularly land in the way that I wanted to. But wow, has SNL's quality improved in the last 2 episodes? This is what I was hoping to see coming into 2021. So James, can you tell me a little bit about, what was your favorite episode of these block of 5 and how do you feel about it?
I always say this when people ask me about favorites. I am terrible with favorites, except for when anyone asks me who my favorite kid is, because no, I'm just kidding. I love all my sons the same, but it's hard for me because, to rank and rate things is not how I typically look at things, especially
let me interject though.
Yeah.
Okay, so let me say, don't tell me your favorite if you don't feel like that's something that you want to do, but tell me which one gave you the trends that you want to see moving forward. Is there something like, oh, I saw this in this episode that made me feel really good about the show?
Yeah, no, I will say, I will underscore your point, which is when we noticed, you mentioned it last episode, when the audience was really there and hyping and vibing well, and it wasn't just because of the host, but it really becomes the cyclical thing where you can tell everybody's feeding off of who's in that room, and that's what makes Saturday Night Live, I think, just truly really special. I am with you in that. For me, I think I had high expectations for the shows like Dan Levy and Regina King that were okay. You know what I mean? But I just was expecting more, and it's not anything about the hosts in those particular cases, but just the shows were not as strong as these past two. And John Krasinski, though, if I watched it again now compared to these two, I don't know that I would say it, but I thought that one was a strong one. So all that being said, I think that it's revving up. You know, so many times at the beginning of a season, here's what I'll say in reflection or in hindsight, at the start of a season, people will go, oh my gosh, it was not as good as it was last year. Well, it takes a while for it to find its footing. And especially, I think, during a pandemic in the fall, we were just happy to have it back, and we were giving them a pass, I think, on some things. But all that being said, it's exciting to just see, especially when they have a few weeks off here, several weeks off, that they're going to come back, kind of, you know, hopefully pedal to the metal and just, you know, kick butt at the rest of this season 46.
Yeah, I'm super high on what we're gonna see moving forward. I'm really excited. It's a shame that we only have 6 episodes left. I mean, we want more from the show, so I'm excited to see what's going to happen. Andy, maybe let me know if you feel comfortable talking about which one was your favorite and what you love to see. And I will also second that with, I know that you put out a poll every single week to your audience where you ask people's opinions. Did you feel like there was an audience consensus on which of these 5 was also the favorite?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that the answers are the same for both. Not looking at the polls right now, but I think the Bridgerton episode, people were extremely happy with. Maybe number 2 is probably Nick Jonas, but Bridgerton for sure, I think, is a perfect example to James's point again, to echo him once more. The live factor, you can't underrate when you're watching a show like SNL, and by that I mean, this is a show where you just love to see them really rise to the occasion and seize the moment, meet the moment, and really finding that host who doesn't feel obligatory, if you know what I mean. Someone like the Bridgerton episode, that's a show that just caught fire a couple weeks ago, and SNL was able to get him to host, and then boom, they had a concept, the cast had the right energy and vibe there, and it wasn't. This is not quite the right analogy, but just to use it, John Krasinski has been famous since 2005. He's had 15 years of potential scenarios or what have you, building up in either audience's minds or in the show's mind. So for him, I thought that his episode was okay. I thought it was a fair episode, a fine episode, but it's not like the last couple where the expectation game is a little bit different. And, there's just something about either the writing or the cast performances that really take it to that next level. So for me personally, but also I think if you get into the poll results, I think that, the last 2 have scored significantly better than say the Regina King one, which was a little bit more underwhelming.
Jamie, let me give you an opportunity to jump in here on this one. Let me hear which one you like the best, and is there anything that you would like to see moving forward based on the one that you love the most of the last 5?
I think to answer it in the way you framed it to James, I think that trend-wise, I like what we just saw. I really like the momentum that they gained from last week and what they put into this week, and it almost makes me disappointed we're at the end of this run. I almost wish there had been, maybe 2, then a break of 2 weeks, and then 3 or something like that. So we had another one after this. That being said, I think again, to echo James' point, pedal to the metal when they come back. If they do that, then I'll go out on a limb and say that the last 6 episodes are going to score, on average, better than the first 12 of this season, or the first 14 of this season, like easily, I think. If they continue with this momentum and they continue sort of pushing up from the bottom, tenure wise, and exploiting what they've got up top, but really utilizing those newer cast members, man, I think the sky's the limit. I'm starting to get excited for 47 now. Like, to be completely honest with you.
Yeah, I mean, Jamie, that's what I've been saying all year long, is that I really felt that, the show had been building. A lot of people had problems with the, season 43, 44, 45, as we're kind of getting to the end of this Trump era and how they're covering it. And it really felt like maybe potentially the last few episodes that we got before the at-home stuff last year was building towards like how we're going to end this era and then move on to something very exciting. And it kind of felt like, unfortunately, COVID, stopped all that momentum, and they had to cover the election in the fall, and that was obviously the focus. But now I feel like very, very positive about where the show is going. And just like you, I'm so looking forward to season 47 and where they go from here.
John, real quick before we change the subject, one more thing on the kind of the audience hype thing. When I was listening to my colleagues here on the podcast talk, it's like, Andy, how many times do you think you've probably lost track that you've seen like the more cowbell sketch, or Jamie Theodoric of York,
Debbie Downer,
John, the Chippendales dance, you know what I mean? Like those kinds of things. When you watch those over and over again, like for me, there are things where I notice picking up on like little bits and pieces. And here's the point, is that like the audience response, I start really, listening to how that studio is just going nuts sometimes, and really giving the love for a joke that, because I've seen it so many times, they know what it's coming. And that's, I think, just so important. And you'd hear these people, these cast members and writers who've been interviewed over the years, just talk about the dress audience and the air audience. And so, that's one of the things that, again, we're talking about in a pandemic where that studio size has been reduced to about, 1/4 of what it normally is. And that really, makes a difference when you talk about like a joke that would normally get 40% of the room laughing, that is chunked down significantly. So the past 2 episodes, again, I know we've said it and I'll say it one more time, it's just really been a benefit for everybody involved, especially those in the room, to have such a hyped audience, I think.
Yeah, and it's not even just for us at home. I mean, we are the fans at home that are talking about this, but it's also for the performers. Like when you're out there on stage and you're performing and you're getting the laughs that you're so, trying to get, and you feed off the energy of the audience. We see it in Weekend Update for sure, because, that's, them sitting at a desk and responding to the audience that's live in front of them. But, even just in any sketch, like it just brings up the energy of everything. And that's what SNL is supposed to be. It was a great point, James. Let's move on from there. Let's talk a little bit more. We're about 25 minutes in. Let's talk a little bit more about this week's episode and the Nick Jonas show. So, first things first, we open up on this vaccine game show. And my first thought is, all right, here it is. We got this tease at Christmas. We waited 4 episodes very patiently. Here comes Alex Moffat's Biden. But no, of course, we didn't get to see it, which I thought was a little bit of an odd choice, but a choice that SNL seems to be okay with making. And I'm sure, as discussed on Saturday, that we will see it in the next episode. And if we don't, that will be weird. But it was just a little bit, my expectations were I was stopped for a second. Saying all of that, it was interesting to see how they cover this cold open. James, can I get your opinion on how they did it?
Again, I was appreciative of it being creative, being different. It was okay. I mean, there was some good jokes in there. My biggest thing, I guess, my biggest takeaway that I would share with you all and those listening is that the next morning, on Sunday morning, and I don't even know what it was because I can't name the show because I was flipping through or it was just on and I caught it at the tail end. But there was a CBS Sunday morning type news program that had Fauci on live, and they played the clip for him from the previous night, which again, we've seen them, replay things from, political things on those Sunday shows before. But for Fauci to be looking at Fauci in real time, I thought was funny. He smiled, didn't get too worked up about it, but
James, was he upset that Brad Pitt wasn't playing him?
Right, because that's who he wanted to have play him. Right, he didn't say that, but so there was that piece that I just wanted to mention that just thought was funny to have the guy watch it here live on TV. But then the true fact of the matter, and again, I'm coming from Indianapolis, Indiana here, where teachers in many states are getting the vaccine, but not here in Indiana. So it was, really, close to home as far as like, how do you get this thing? And we're all kind of waiting patiently. But after the cold open, much of the rest of the show is where I enjoyed it.
All right. Well, Andy, what was your take on the cold open and how they started? Did you have similar thoughts to me?
I thought it was a bit of a slog, to be honest. Well, let me say this. I didn't think it was the sum of its parts. There was a lot of good stuff in there, a lot of funny stuff in there. For instance, Pete Davidson. I find his Andrew Cuomo kind of funny and commendable. Heidi Gardner, as always, killed it with her bit as the IT worker who works for OnlyFans. I thought that was pretty inspired. But overall, I just didn't, they parade out all the different cast members. I just don't feel like there's enough to sustain the premise. And, I kind of thought that Adie Bryant, it's like her third go as Ted Cruz. It wasn't quite as iconic as her performance in the previous week's episode with Britney Spears. So overall, I was not a fan, but that's the end of it. I was a fan.
That's totally fair. Jamie, what were your thoughts overall on how they opened up the show? Like we always say on the show, the opening, how they introduce themselves to the audience on a typical Saturday night is so important because, that's where people tune in at 11:30 and get invested in the show. So, Jamie, tell me what your thoughts were overall on the cold open from this past week.
I'll start with a question. And the question is, do you remember when cold opens were like sub 3 minutes?
Yeah.
There's something to that. There's something to setting the pace for the show and setting the tone for the show and doing it quickly and with punch. And I think to, piggyback on Andy's comment that it wasn't the sum of its parts, there were just too many parts. I mean, they had 6, so that you started out with the Fauci piece and sort of the dated joke with using the game show so you think you can dance, right? That's a little bit dated. So you have Fauci off the top, and then you get the 3 governors, and they each get a little back and forth. And then you introduce 6 different candidates. Why not tighten it up and have 3 candidates, and go with punchier, funnier jokes, and it also gets you more laughs potentially, but gets you out of the cold open like hot, in a great way.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, I just really felt that the Britney Spears one the last week was just like such a improvement over everything that we've seen prior. So this felt like a little bit of a step back. Fortunately, I do feel like the quality of the show made up for it later on, maybe minus a sketch here or there. So let's talk a little bit about that. Nick Jonas, he is a first-time host. It was, we've had this incredible run of first-time hosts this season. I mean, from Bill Burr all the way to Reggae Jean last week, Nick Jonas. It's just there's so many first-time hosts. There's something to be said, James, about these rumors that are circulating online that SNL was having trouble booking some hosts. Saying all of that, how did you feel about Nick Jonas going into it?
I mean, I expected him to do fine, and he did. So that was, I wasn't, I kind of don't get too amped up sometimes about who the given host is, except for that sometimes when it's a former cast member or a very frequent, or a long time host, you kind of just go, there's some history there. So you kind of get excited by that. But I thought he did a great job, and it was a really fantastic episode. I don't know if now's the time or the place, but it's the sort of SNL historian in me who kind of also, if we're going to talk about this particular episode, a couple things come to mind just in looking at it through the scope of just a wider lens here. Longtime camera operator Eric Eisenstein retired at the end of this particular episode, which is it's always sad for at least mixed emotions to see somebody who's been there for a long time step away. But congratulations on his retirement and everything. But it was really cool. There was a tight kind of shot, in one of those teasers between the commercials that Don chose of him at camera 5. So I thought that was cool. Another little fun nugget that I came upon is Pete Schultz, who is Update's head writer. It was actually his dog who is seen in one of the little capture things on Weekend Update when they talk about the liberal wish list, and it's the free college for pets, and there's the dog with the cap on. So that was kind of a cool, just sometimes these nuggets or things that I tend to latch onto. I don't know if anybody else cares, but
people care. It's great to hear. Yeah. Yeah. Give us more, James. What else you got?
Well, the only other thing I was going to say as I'm thinking about is I really liked the the kind of Worlds of Fun reference, the Viking Voyager, which is a real amusement park and is a real ride attraction there. And I think that Heidi Gardner had something to do with it, because that's in her neck of the woods. So it was fun to see that. And I think that she probably enjoyed, just like any of us would, to just have something from our childhood growing up that is part of our, worlds colliding, sharing it, in that way, I think was probably fun for her.
Yeah, it's so cool. Look, I want to get into all these sketches and talk about the specifics. Once again, congratulations to Eric on his retirement and wishing him all the best moving forward. Andy, can you tell me about your expectations going into the Nick Jonas episode? He had been on SNL a few times before as a musical guest and has appeared in sketches, like particularly with Alec Baldwin and I believe with Julia Louis-Dreyfus. So, Andy, what were your expectations going into the Nick Jonas show?
Yeah, no, you just hit the nail on the head. He's certainly no novice to Studio 8H. That said, I didn't have particularly high expectations, just because, I'd seen him in Jumanji and a few different things. So I knew that he was capable of comedy, but I wasn't expecting a Justin Timberlake level performance or anything like that. And I don't think that we really got that. Nor did we particularly need that. It was a cast centric show, and they gave Nick a decent amount of material that kind of fit his skill level, his skill set. So I thought it was a good balance of screen time for him without overwhelming him or without just making him the traditional straight guy either. So it hit the right note.
Yeah, it's a good point. I had seen him in Hawaii 5-0 as well. He was on a hacker on there, and he was really good in that role. So I knew he was a solid actor. He's obviously a great performer. But it really felt like you said that they didn't make, even though Nick Jonas was the host of this episode, I never really felt like he was the star of this episode, and maybe that's okay because we ended up getting a good show from that. Jamie, what were your expectations going into the Nick Jonas episode? Were you excited to see him?
No, it wasn't. It really wasn't. My expectations were low.
Be more honest.
Like last week, I didn't know much about him. I suppose I was probably colored a little bit by the fact that he's in like a boy band or whatever. So that's not my thing really. So I didn't know how I was going to feel about it, but my expectations were low. But I feel like they did really well with what they had. Like a really great chef taking a good ingredient and making it the vehicle. Like a really great pasta. Nick Jonas is the pasta here, right? Like he's just pretty ordinary. There's nothing that stands out over the course of the night to me that he did particularly that I'll remember, a couple episodes down the road, but everything was solid,
Yeah.
Like he didn't detract from anything at all. Like, so he gave it 110%. He knocked it out of the park for what my expectations were.
No, for sure. It's very true, and congrats to Nick for that. James, is there? Let's talk a little bit more about the episode. Is there a sketch that you would like to talk about to start off our conversation tonight?
Again, I know that I'm terrible by saying it this way. That like I'm terrible with favorites. I think that there's three. If I had to pick my top three,
give me one.
Let me just summarize. Oh God, darn it. Well, I'm going to do it by saying.
We'll get to those, but just talk about one that first one that you want to talk about.
Yeah. Talk about one. There's something, I don't think that you're anticipating me saying this, but there's something about the Diane Warwick talk show that is appealing to me, especially after watching it a second time. And here's where I'm going to go with it: is not only is it a fine impression that Ego's doing, I like the kind of little intricacies that are built in there that are not overly stated. She does her little tops. Here are the top stories or whatever. And then she sings, "I'll never love this way again." It's just, random. The questions that she's asking are just absurd. There's the Machine Gun Kelly thing now, because this is the second appearance of this, where is that the, equivalent of what's his name from the What's Up With That?
Lindsey Buckingham.
Lindsey Buckingham, yeah, where Machine Gun Kelly just is kind of left to his own demise.
Matt Damon on Jimmy Kimmel.
Yeah,
oh, right.
yeah. No, exactly. And then even the kind of Lauren Holt audience member thing. I mean, I think there's just, I don't know. There's something about that I find amusing. All that to be said, if you step back and look at the whole show, which again, I know, John, wasn't exactly your question right now, I'd say it's a good episode, but I don't know that it's one that like I would point to maybe a year from now as going, let's go back to this one. I enjoyed it for what it was at the time. So there's that.
Yeah, that's fair. James, let me ask you something just before I head over to Andy. I know that during this Dionne Warwick sketch, we talked about it on Saturday nights, there was this very weird noise. Has it been confirmed anywhere that this was the bird? Do we know that for a fact?
Well, I don't know that it's been confirmed, other than I'm going to say that was the bird, because that's exactly what it sounds like, and I've went back to listen to it. Say what, Andy?
No, I was just saying, sounded like a bird to me.
Yeah.
Okay.
It precisely was, and it has not been removed from the we talked about it, I think, on Saturday night, Sunday morning, whatever you call it, but it shows up in the sometimes they remove some things or tweak some things, and the take some dress versions and place it in there, but it's still there. But yeah.
Okay. Andy, tell me what your thoughts were on this Dionne Warwick talk show sketch. It was the second time we were seeing it. Were you expecting to see this again? I mean, I know a lot of people really loved it the first time. Were you happy you saw it a second time?
Well, I was happy that I saw it a second time for a couple reasons. First, because Ego just nails it. She crushes it. It's a great character. It's a great idea. And sub B to that point is I like the notion that the show is returning to sketches and returning to these larger than life characters. So, with the basis of that behind us, I didn't quite love this. This is one of those sketches that I can kind of take or leave it. There's a flatness to it. It doesn't arc, which, I love the arc. I love the beginning, middle, and end that even some of the sketches on this episode had. This one didn't quite have. So in spirit and in theory, I'm in favor of this coming back. And if they want to bring it back, that's more power to it. But I personally was not a huge fan of the material this round.
Yeah, there was one part of this sketch that I do love, and it's really the only part that gets me. But it's basically the fact that Ego plays Dionne Warwick as like an older person who has no filter. And I think that's the thing that really kills in that sketch. Like when she shows Nick Jonas a picture of Priyanka Chopra and says, like, now show us your penis. Like, that's the kind of stuff that will kill in a Dionne Warwick sketch. So I hope if they bring that back another time, that's the kind of stuff we'll get to see.
Actually, just to kind of add to that point a little bit, her Ego's energy in this sketch, playing this character, it's one of these big, bright moments that the show used to do a lot of. I'm thinking of some of Will Ferrell's characters, or I think in my Entertainment Weekly recap, I compared it to like a Martin Short character, like a Jiminy Glick type moment. So she has that kind of power to her. And so I totally agree with what you're saying. That kind of non sequitur was pretty good.
Yeah, it was good. Jamie, what do you think about the Dionne Warwick sketch?
I think Ego's a star. Like, I think she is just a star. And it's a pleasure to watch her in this vehicle. I hope that they don't run it out so that it gets stale, because this was only the second time we've seen it, I think, right? Second time?
Yeah, second time. Yep.
And, it was almost beat for beat what it was in the past. But that's okay. That's, sort of the DNA of SNL to a certain degree. You have a reoccurring character, and then you run them out and let them do their things, and you have the Machine Gun Kelly bit. And, I was fine with it. I enjoyed it, and I enjoyed it because she's a star, and I enjoyed it because her singing to Andrew Dismukes with the bird on his shoulder and the bird going the opposite way. I've got all the time in the world for animals just not cooperating with sketches, when you want them to. I've got all the time in the world for that. So that was a lot of fun for me as well.
That's what makes live comedy so great, is when you get moments like that. So it was so wonderful to see. Andy, let me send it over to you. Give me another sketch that you would like to talk about.
So I think that this was mentioned earlier in the podcast, but the Viking Voyager amusement park sketch was probably my favorite sketch of the night. Really captured a very specific group date that teenagers do. It was very familiar to me. I loved all the different components of it. I loved the setting that we talked about. I loved, the writing of it. I think Heidi wrote it, didn't she?
Yeah, she contributed to writing it.
It just felt it felt very lived in and real. And I thought the performances were great. And I just love cuck as an insult. The MAGA world has owned cuck for too long, and I think it should be a bipartisan insult, frankly. So overall, it had that sort of human vibe that I always appreciate SNL embracing. It wasn't the only kind of human sketch of the night, which was nice. It's one reason why I liked this episode as much as I did. But it also had those belly laughs where you're just calling, Kyle Mooney a cuck, and seeing him throttle a Pixar version of Jamie Foxx. What's more to love there?
Yeah, from as Tracy Morgan would say, from Sal. So
Yeah.
yeah. So like I James, I know you were in the chat with us on Saturday night, but the one thing that we could not get over about this sketch was like the arc of them like very subtly calling him a cuck to like very outwardly obviously calling him cuck, and he's like, hey, my name, I think he said Robert. So it was just so weird to me, this aspect of that sketch. Can you
Actually, and to that point, sorry to interrupt, but to that point, my wife and I were watching it. At first, the first couple times, she's like, "Is his name Cuck? Like, are we hearing this? Like, come again?" And eventually, it turns out that that's like the point of the sketch, which is equally hilarious.
Yeah.
Well,
what do you think of it?
That's another reason why I loved this one so much, is because what is the main joke? Is it that? Is it the 6 foot tall, Saul character? Is it the fact that they keep talking about for height reasons? Do you want to try this for height? Like, let's, there's so many just sort of random. It's the random things that is like so my humor. Like my brother and I, when we would watch Saturday Night Live, again, a family affair, growing up, we would hang on to things that maybe others wouldn't see as funny. And so, no, I'm with you, John, that I just, it was just random. And I love random.
Yeah. Someone made a comment on Saturday night that it felt like this episode took like all of their remaining 10-to-1s that they threw out in the trash the last few weeks, and they like took them out and just made them a little bit better and threw them into the rest of the episode. Jamie, what did you think about this amusement park Worlds of Fun sketch?
My first note that I have written down is it feels like a 10-to-1.
Great. Okay.
It had a great, irreverence to it, and I enjoyed it far more than I thought I was going to. When they sort of initially set up what, sort of set up what it was going to be. It's so random. I enjoyed. I always love watching Kyle as the awkward teenager. I think he's so good with that sort of squished up mouth and sort of Garth, almost like a Garth type character that he plays. It's so great, and him dropping the name of the sole character, Joe Gardner, I think it is, or Joel Gardner. I thought that was great. How he just sort of peppers it in there, and then of course the cuck stuff. It's a really good sketch.
Well, can I just interject with one other thing? Like, it's just, you want to wonder, like in the writer's room, like to go, let's have it be that guy from Soul. You know what I mean? Like, just,
it's very specific.
like how they get there. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I love sketches that kind of have their own logic and live in their own imaginative space. And there's not just like one flat joke or one flat idea in there. There's a couple, like, it's random. Yeah, you guys are right. But it also kind of weirdly works. You know what I mean? Like it kind of clicks together in a very specific, strange way.
Yeah. The physicality that Kyle does with the dummy when he's, getting into the apparatus, with the huge soul doll. So great. It's just really funny, and he's having a tough time not breaking as well. It's great to see them fight off those breaks.
Yeah, and it was great to have that right after update too. I think that was it was a good place for that. It just like kept the momentum going throughout the rest of the night. So great points, guys. Jamie, can you tell me if there is a sketch that you really want to talk about?
Oh boy, I think the pre-tapes were both really, really great, but I think the one that I'll focus on is the one that really hit home with me, which is Murder Show. I watched that with my wife, and I pointed out to her, it just reminded me so much of what she does, and I'm sure everyone listening to this or watching this has that same sort of feeling. Just all these mundane tasks that we do right now in front of the television, watching some of this insane stuff that we're watching. It was ripe for getting picked on, and yet I didn't see it coming at all. once they got there, though, I was totally on board and really excited with. And I thought the way they covered the production of this, you know, I don't know how this show does this in such a short period of time, puts together something like this creatively and from a production standpoint, because they've got all the apartment shots, and then they've got this beautiful production with the red background and the red TV sets, and you know, all the girls are dressed in red and you know, sort of plastic looking or whatever. I don't know how to describe it, but just really solid. You know, the show deserves much more props than it gets for the pre-tapes. I know a lot of people say, you know, they shouldn't be doing them, but I think it's a having done this before, to put something together in, you know, 3 days is just bonkers to me. So I really, really enjoyed that sketch a lot.
Oh, it was so good. And I think I think I said this a couple days ago, but the pre-tapes that they did in this 5-episode run, you know, talking about these 5 episodes, I think are some of the best pre-tapes they've done in the last few years. Like between, you know, Krasinski singing the Office theme song, and then the Regina King weed gummy stuff, and like the stuff that we got this week, there was just so much there. And, you know, like you could just go back and play any of the 10 pre-tapes we just saw. I think those were excellent, high quality pre-tapes. And I think with this murder show one, you know, I was looking on Twitter at the time when this came out, and it was literally everyone was like, I feel seen. Like I've never felt like anything has spoken to me as much as this was. And it's so funny because I here's like a little bit of a personal anecdote, is like, my girlfriend is very different than me. You know, when I want to go to bed, like I'm the type of person that I need like the lights off. I need no sound, like nothing. And I'm sure like a lot of couples can relate to this, but she is like, I have to listen to something to be able to fall asleep. So we're very different in that sense. And she, like, you give her any true crime show, she will fall asleep to that one. So whenever I see there's a new like murder show on Netflix, I'm like, oh, here you go, Allie. Like I send it over to her. So it was so relatable when I saw this. James, what did you think about the murder show pre-tape?
I loved it, and I loved the bachelor party. I think I might have messaged you right after it to just go, this is great stuff. You know, and I love the you know, to Jamie's point, you know, the show over time has evolved into, you know, the film unit is not, you know, like it once was, where Signorelli was, you know, doing commercial parodies, and he's a god in my opinion. But now with what they're doing, it has a different, you know, sort of sensibility in terms of how quickly they do. I mean, it's technically, I think 24 hours, 20 if you count, you know, when they shoot it and edit it and have it up and ready for dress. And obviously, and in most cases, they have a version that goes to dress that is not completely ready, and recut some things before the live version. It boggles my mind, and it's those editors and everybody who's involved in that I just appreciate as well. But the music part of it too. There's a lot of people out there, I think, in the community going, I want that soundtrack, you know. So both the bachelor party and the murder show stuff is great, is written well in terms of just the music and the message, and it's hilarious. So yes, a huge fan. And speaking of music, actually, which John, pardon me, I kind of get on these little tangents. I noticed this about the episode, if I may. It was a very musical show. You know, like the monologue, you know, the drink with me from Les Miserables. Of course, the pre-tapes, both Murder Show and Bachelor Party, we're talking about Cinderella's Slipper with Bippity Boppity Boo. You know, the Deanna Warlock, she's singing, as we mentioned, Chance Encounter at the end, the Take Me Out to the Ball Game. I mean, I don't know. Again, SNL Stats, if this one is any more or less compared to some other shows, but a lot of music in there, and it makes me go, oh man, some days this one will be under, you know, locked down, and because of the music licensing, you know, we might not see it again anytime soon. But I enjoyed it for that, kind of music and as well.
Yeah, I think they've cleared a lot of that stuff over the last few years in a way that they didn't a while back, to be able to re-air and post some of those things online. So hopefully we'll continue to get to see those. Let's I want to talk about the bachelor party sketch pre-tape, but Andy, if you don't mind talking about the murder show one first, what did you think of it?
Sure, absolutely, and I can dovetail both those together if you need a segue.
Let's do it.
I think earlier you said relatability, which I think really gets at the heart of this episode overall. Like I was speaking about earlier, these are very relatable premises, from murder show to bachelor party to two lonely oddballs commiserating and worried over the soul of their city and COVID. They're funny pieces. They're well written, but they're also there's something very knowing there as well too. They're very 2021. Like let's put it that way. So in the case of Murder Show, as folks have been saying, this is our mom, this is our wife. But at the same time, Bachelor Party, if I might say, this is us. Like like this is something that I think a lot of guys have thought about or experienced or heard about at some point or another. So just that jumped out to me, that Nick Jonas, this guy who's been famous since he was in elementary school, was the host of an episode that was so humanistic, I guess, and very relatable.
Yeah, it's so true. And we were talking about musical pre-tapes before. I didn't even bring up Loco from last week, which was it was such a banger. So that was great too. Like you said, Murder Show, very relatable. I brought up an anecdote about Murder Show. I will not bring up any anecdotes about Bachelor Party, but what I will say is that was, for me, my sketch of the night. I just thought that was so well written. The chops that the SNL performers had on them to sing that. And, it took a different direction than I thought. Originally I thought the whole thing was going to be when Kyle Mooney was like, hey, what did do you remember that person that you grew up with? And I thought this was going in a different direction, where one of the strippers was going to be the person that Nick Jonas grew up with. So that's where I thought that was going. And then it just went.
Young woman. I thought it was going to be a promising young woman riff. I don't know if you guys have seen that movie yet.
Right. Yeah. So I saw that too. And then it went in a completely different direction. And sometimes those are the best things that happen on SNL, when you're expecting one thing and it goes a different way and it totally lands. Jamie, let me go to you. What did you think about this other pre-tape, this Bachelor Party one?
I can imagine that in a different time, first of all, I loved it, but I can imagine in a different time that in my younger years, this would be a song that you would, as you were walking past somebody at work or something like that you had a special, relationship with or bond with, you would sing a chorus of, as you're walking past them or something like that, or just make references to, because it's so risque, but it's so, fun at the same time. It goes to show you how far the show has gone from the Conan O'Brien sketch, where they wrote the word, where they said the word penis as many times as they could, to here we are, 15 years or 20 years later, maybe it's even 25 years later, probably.
I think it's
you can say boner, dozens of times in a sketch. I just can't imagine a world that exists. So there's something about, the 16-year-old me or the 17-year-old me working in the restaurant, with my buddies. We would have just ate this up. But even me as a 46-year-old man, I really enjoyed it. It was a lot of fun. I loved Kyle's character. I loved that there were actual characters in it. They each had their own sort of beats. And but the bridge of the song with Kyle Mooney, sort of lamenting on the fact that he was the lone guy at the bachelor party from his youth, from his past. That's very relatable as well. And just good on them. It was a lot of fun.
it kind of felt like, if SNL was going to put together a CD, like the best music of the 2000s or whatever, that they would put like It's Okay If It's in a Three-Way next to the Boner song. Like it kind of felt like they go right into each other. So, that's so true, Jamie. Like the same way I talking to you before about Andy Samberg and his musical influence on the show. This really felt like something that was of the Lonely Island vibe. So I'm with you on that. James, you had mentioned that there was 3 sketches that you wanted to talk about, and I made you only talk about one. Did we cover all 3, or was there another one that you wanted to bring up?
We almost did. We, in no particular order, we hit the bachelor party, the Dionne Warwick talk show, and the last one, I really enjoyed the chance encounter, the 10-to-1 sketch, even more so after watching it, a second and third time. I think and it's just because it's kind of like my type of humor. I mean, the first thing I said to you this evening at the start of this was a line from that you may or may not have caught, but it just it is quirky, and go with me on this because I know inevitably you're going to ask, the remaining episodes, what do you hope for? Can you imagine? Just go with me here. That if the chance encounter, which was the 10-to-1 sketch, was the cold open, because it's almost like wackadoodle enough like the Wolverines from season 1, episode 1. Of course, that was really just very short, in and out. But it's the idea of like tuning in and going, what is this? What am I watching? And, why can't the cold open be more peculiar? Because again, we're going a little bit more down a path of it being less predictable. And so, why couldn't the chance encounter work as a cold open? In this particular case, you would have seen Nick Jonas in the cold open, which again would get some applause. That's happened before when they come out before the monologue. But again, I enjoyed that one for what it was in terms of just the strange beats, the strange humor. And so that was maybe one of my favorite ones of the night.
Yeah, it's a really interesting thought experiment, James, that you spoke about, and it really feels like if the show would have done that, we all would have been like, WTF, like this is not what they do in season 46 of SNL. It's an interesting, perspective to think about that. So thanks for bringing that up. Andy, do you want to touch on that a little bit? And what were your thoughts about this last sketch, this chance encounter one?
Yeah, no, I love that idea. I would love for the show to exude that type of confidence in itself and not go with this broad current events, throw paint at the wall. Let's have everything for have everything for somebody type of approach, which they've done for seasons now. Let's go smaller. Let's go more character based. I don't think, especially with the business model wrapped up around the clips going viral on YouTube and whatnot. Unfortunately, I don't see it happening, but no, I love the heart of that. Someone on Twitter pointed out that this was like a last call episode or a sketch for the COVID era, because you can't have them drooling over each other and being silly, which I actually prefer because it kind of reins in Kate's propensity to mug sometimes. I don't know if the Kate stands listening will want to burn me at the stake or not for that, but I thought that having her be a little bit more restrained was pretty compelling, and overall I thought again it kind of tied into some of these other sketches where it was not explosive and broad. It was random and silly, but also kind of nice and nicely paced.
Definitely. Jamie, did you want to touch on that last sketch of the night, the chance encounter one?
Yeah, I think it was odd and irreverent, and I think that like Andy said, the pace was good. It was just a joke machine. It was just a reason to write some funny, random, non sequitur, gags, and they all landed, and that's wonderful. That's wonderful when that happens, that they all land, because they didn't necessarily have a right to land. It was a 10-to-1 sketch after all, but they did. And, from Kate drinking milk out of a bowl to, him pulling a kitten out of his jacket, Nick pulling a kitten out of his jacket, you just didn't
Which
see
I believe was a
any of it coming.
pre-tape, by the way, Jamie. I think they pre-recorded the
yes,
cat
they
coming
showed him
out.
started doing that.
Yeah.
Yeah. But none of it you saw coming. And that's great. Like even Andrew Dismute's role as the piano player, I thought that was hysterical when he was no, it's Guy Piano.
Guy Piano.
I'm not piano guy, I'm Guy Piano. I thought that was just wonderful. And their weird version of Take Me Out to the Ball Game, like how could you not just chuckle along with that's how numbers work? That's really, that's why we watch this show, to sort of get lost in irreverent gags and things like that, and not get so wrapped up in the politics and everything. So yeah, I think this really worked. It was an interesting bookend for Kate as well. Like she opened the show and she closed the show. So I think that's an interesting bookend for her, like a real strong showing for her. And yeah, I enjoyed it.
Yeah, I love the way you put that, and she led the night with 6 sketches, so she was a huge part of this particular episode. A couple other things, that I have noted down before we kind of talk a little bit more about the cast. One of the things I forgot to say before during the bachelor party one was our friend Sammy K posted on Twitter. He said, "Where do I get one of these Mickey Mania shirts?" Well, SNL, if you're listening, send us over some Mickey Mania shirts, because those were really great aspect of that. The only ones we didn't really talk about, the monologue was okay, but the mirror workout, I did actually really enjoy that one. I don't know if there's a cross section at all in our audience between like comic book show, TV show fans and SNL, but this is literally a storyline on The Flash right now. Is like one of the main characters is stuck in a mirror. So I just thought that was personally funny. But it was really great. And I thought that, Jamie, you had mentioned before, I took note of it, that you said that Pete is having such a great season, and it is really something that we keep talking about. Well, I just felt like this Pete as a Zoozle and the Shannon Delgado stuff, I just thought this was really clever. Is there anyone on the panel that, let me know, is there anyone who wanted to talk about this mirror workout one at all before we move on?
I mean, the one thing that jumped out to me, and again, John, you said it earlier, where you think SNL is going to go zig, but then they zag. When this sketch started, I thought it was going to be, the latest iteration of the Zoom Pilates. Everyone gets to take a turn and play an eccentric, biking trainer. So originally, that's where I thought we were going, and I kind of leaned back in my chair and took a sip of my drink and was like, "All right, let's see where this goes." But then it changed, and it was something fresh and a little bit new, And I like the idea again that we had like an established beginning, middle, and end to this sketch. It wasn't my favorite sketch of the night, no, but I thought that it was well executed for what it was, and there's a lot of funny moments there. With again, like I totally agree with the stuff that's been said about Pete, and I thought it was a good moment for Heidi and Nick Jonas as well too.
For sure. James, did you want to touch on any of that or no?
Yeah, no, I enjoyed it too, and again, Pete's role, I thought, took it to a different level, because you just you didn't see that coming. And I liked the little added jokes in there too, like the beginning when they were making the list of all the other exercise regimes that didn't pan out, but this was going to, those kinds of things. And then of course I would be remiss to not say the crew and the set folks. I mean, there's a certain level of extra production value in that particular type of thing, and I thought it was played really well.
Yeah. Jamie, do you want to talk about that one at all, or was there any other ones from anything we didn't talk about yet from the episode you want to touch on?
I mean, other than the weekend update, desk pieces.
Do you want to talk about that?
I just think they were both really great. I think anytime you get Keenan at the desk, I think he's such a pro. I think when things start to go sideways, he is able to just reel it in immediately. And in this case, he had Che in hysterics, it seemed, and he was having a lot of fun with that. And that makes the appearance that much more fun. Like, he is able to channel that anxiety into exhilaration for the audience. And that's great, because if you've ever watched sketch comedy live, that anxiety transference to excitement is key. You never want to sit there and feel like awkward for the people that are on stage, or awful for them. And there's some people that are just so good at like just twisting the handlebars and making you forget about any of the cringe stuff, and making it work. And Kenan Thompson is just a pro's pro. And then Cecily Strong, she just always brings it at the desk. And it seems like she's got a great character right now in oh my gosh, I forget the person's name.
Marjorie Taylor Greene.
Marjorie Taylor Greene, thank you.
Yeah.
It seems like she's having a lot of fun with that, and good for her. There's a lot of material there to work with. So, kudos. I thought those two things will definitely deserve to be called out. I thought they were really good.
Yeah, absolutely. If it's okay with you guys, I would like to move on and talk about the cast. We covered a lot of stuff from this particular episode, which I like. Yeah, I think we're all on the same page about. There was really good things in this episode. Maybe not the best stuff of the season, but it was a pretty good episode overall. Let's talk about the cast, though. Is there somebody that stood out to you guys that you want to talk about? James, I'm not going to ask you to rank any cast members, but just give me one person that you would like to point out and talk about.
No, I actually I'm prepared to say for this one, which is for me, it just has to be Heidi. I think that she is fantastic at every role she touches, even if it's a minor role. She is believable, 110%. And this coming from somebody who personally has been watching for a different project I'm doing, watching all the episodes in the series in chronological order. That when
I've been there.
Yeah, right. But when you do that, you start to pick up on some things, and this is where I'm going with Heidi. Is Jan Hooks, to me, was one of the best there ever was. And especially when you see her coming in compared to people in previous casts, her first episode, her second episode, I mean, she is so darn strong. She was, and just a favorite of mine. And I see a lot of, again, I don't really like comparisons, but it's just like when I've watched those, season 12, when Jan was introduced right now, I'm seeing a Heidi Gardner that is like sort of untouchable. Like she's just almost almost in the sense that's like, when you had, I know this is a strange analogy, but when you had Phil Hartman, there were people that were all about Farley and Sandler. But Phil was the man, he was the glue. And I just think Heidi is such a rock, and she brings characters. Like, I love the weekend update thing from last week. That was just kind of a random, strange, piece there. When she does that, and when she does, the teenager in the amusement park thing, or the person who's trying to get, the COVID vaccines at the beginning, so strong. And she's just, to me, she's number one in this episode, is just being like, top player.
Nice. Glad to hear it. We love Heidi over here. Andy Hoglund, let me hear from you. Who do you want to talk about? Somebody from the cast that really stood out to you?
Well, let me just piggyback very briefly on Heidi Gardner, because I love the Jan Hooks comparisons. I'm certainly not above a good comparison. And the one thing that makes me want to further agree, if that's even possible, with you, James, is this. When Jan Hooks comes out in, what was that, 1986? There's 9 cast members total, right? And there's 3 female cast members, right? It's
Absolutely
Laura Dunn and Victoria Jackson. God bless Victoria Jackson. But that's the landscape in 1986. So I'm using that as a preamble to compliment Heidi even further. Here we are, 35 years later. The cast is over twice the size. There's 10 female cast members. This is a much, much, much more competitive environment than even Jan Hooks had to deal with. That it was different, but I would say that right now, to get airtime, to be able to really assert your comic presence, it takes a certain skill set. So I want to just commend Heidi for continuing to do that. Otherwise, I also want to just kind of go back to the fact that we saw a strong Kate episode today, and coupled with what they're giving, A.D. Bryan and Cecily Strong. I don't know if this is the swan song for those 3 stellar core cast members who've been on the show for a decade. But if it was, I think this would be a good fitting goodbye, because it feels like they give them material that they feel comfortable with, and it's kind of like a greatest hits. If you're going to a concert or something, you're hearing the last notable songs. So it will be curious to see if they leave at the end of the season.
Yeah, and that's certainly going to be, one of the main things we're going to talk about moving into the spring as we head towards the end of 46. And you're very close, actually. I think there are 9 female cast members out of 20. So, I mean, think about it. That's almost 50% of the cast, which is wonderful to see compared to what it was, obviously, in 1986 with Jan. So, Jamie, tell me something. Tell me one of the cast members that you want to talk about that really stood out to you.
I think for some reason, Chloe Fineman stood out for me this episode, and she was only in 2 sketches, and one of them was the Cinderella sketch, which we didn't even talk about because it was, largely not very memorable. But there was something about the way she was featured in that murder show sketch that made her feel like a star to me, and I thought that was, really, again, hopeful for the future. But if I'm if I'm putting a sash on somebody for this episode as champion of the episode, I have to say Kate McKinnon. Like, she opened and closed the episode. She was featured prominently in the monologue. She was, the only character other than Azul in the mirror training sketch. She was just all over the place, and episodes are better when the stars are shining, and she's a star, and she shone, and the episode was good as a result. Like, really, there was again nothing that I'm gonna want to put in my time capsule, but it's a solid episode. I would show this episode to anybody that says SNL doesn't bring it anymore. I would say, well, take a look at this, because every single sketch basically has something going for it, and that's a big thing for me.
Definitely. And I think that, we're going to have one of our By the Numbers shows in a couple of weeks where we dive deep into the analytics and talk about, how the individual cast members are doing. But I do want to, shout out a couple people while we're talking about this. One of them is Ego, who I think that, just really consistently great screen time the entire season. Our friend Pete Hutchison sent me the sketch tallies for the entire season, and she's just consistently bringing it every single week. She's always in a few sketches. It seems like one of the cast members that she's only in her third season, but SNL is consistently relying on Ego to carry certain sketches. So I want to give props to her. And then I really think that out of all the new players that we've seen this season, we had no idea at Christmas what we were going to see moving forward from Andrew, Lauren, and Punky. Like, that was the main things I said to the panelists. I said, what do you guys want to see moving into 2021? They said more from Andrew, Lauren, and Punky. And I do feel like we're getting to see more of Andrew now. And I think that is exciting because it seems like he's fitting right in, between the grocery wrap stuff last week and then his guy piano this week. It just seems like he's becoming a solid member of the cast. So I'm really excited to see that. Look, there's a lot of positive things to talk about over the last few episodes. Unexpectedly, we got this card appear during one of the commercials, or right as we're going to commercial this week, that Maya Rudolph is going to be hosting in a month's time, which is really exciting because if you remember, we talked about this at the beginning of 46. We said, well, Maya, is going to have to host. We thought Jim Carrey probably would at some point this season as well, but Maya's going to have to host because she has such an integral impact on the show. And then, as we started this podcast, I made the point that it really feels like 46A was where Maya was with the cast, and this is almost a whole new season. So it's going to be interesting to see if we revert to the feeling of the Maya Rudolph episode, like a fall episode, or it's going to feel more like a 2021 episode. So James, give me your expectations for what you would like to see for the Maya Rudolph episode on March 27th.
Yeah, I love Maya, so I'm very excited about that. I think this is the second time she's going to host. She's been a cameo or a guest, many times. Last time she hosted, I think Amy Poehler showed up, Justin Timberlake showed up, I think. So there's maybe potential, especially she's got as I mentioned, Amy. She's got friends that might be there. Who knows? But it was also, I think, a pretty decent episode last time. Again, she was in the cast for quite some time, so she's going to bring some great things. But I think that there was a Bronx beat that showed itself the last time she hosted. But the topical thing that I remember was the Obama show, the take on the Cosby thing, which was, I think, kind of a memorable piece. So I think that when she comes back into to NBC, she'll put her writer's hat on and she'll be game for lots of things. I expect, especially because of some of the downtime here, that the cast and writers will be rested and refreshed, hopefully. And I just am anticipating some great things.
Yeah, Andy, what are your expectations for the Maya Rudolph episode coming up in a month?
Well, first of all, when the episode, when her episode was announced, it kind of reminded me of when Alec Baldwin hosted in, I think, 2017, where, John, like you said, it's like she's been in so many sketches, at least in the first half of the year. It really is like she's been a cast member, kind of that in between level. But that said, James just mentioned Bronx Beat. We saw Amy Poehler and Maya briefly interact physically during the Golden Globes broadcast yesterday. I'd love to see that come back. A couple other favorite recurring characters that I think would be very cool to see once more is her host from Wake Up Wakefield, then also Gemini's twin, Britannica. If either of those sketches were revived, or if we got a little Donatella Versace, something like that, or maybe even Oprah. Let's see Oprah again. Maya's one of those cast members that she's so versatile and has such a deep bench and has so many different friends. Whether it's Amy Poehler, like James was saying, or any of the folks from the Big Mouth crew. I think this is going to be one of those special episodes where the cast is really excited and the writers want to bring it, as Kirsten Dunst once said.
Yeah, for sure. She is a all-time great cast member, and there's no more perfect person to talk about all-time greats with than Jamie. So Jamie, tell me what you think and your excitement going into this Maya Rudolph episode.
Well, I'm going to be the wet blanket because although she is an absolute slam dunk Hall of Famer, like there's no doubt about it, she will be in the Hall of Fame. I think the fact that she's been so heavily featured for the last 18 months means that my excitement level isn't what it could be for an announcement like this. You know, when Not Ready for Primetime player comes back to host, I want it to feel like really special and really exciting. And it's only been 6 months since we've seen her.
Right, like you wanted this to be like Eddie Murphy or Adam Sandler type of vibe.
Maybe not to that level, but bigger still. You know, like, but yeah, something like that. She's only hosted one other time, so to see her come back a second time, you know, I want to be more excited about this. To be completely honest with you, and to pick up something that John mentioned earlier, the thing that I'm most excited about is I think that her return means we're going to see Kamala. And if we see Kamala, then SNL is going to have to finally tip their hand at what their Biden strategy is. Is it going to be Alex Moffat's to play, or are we going to see Jim Carrey come back, or like what are they going to do with Joe Biden going forward? That's, you know, sort of what I'm excited about. Really, truthfully, I am excited about the 5 and under, the 5-year and under cast that is on this show right now, and I want to see as much of them as possible, and so that mitigates to a certain degree my excitement level for her return.
Yeah, and it's great points, and I hope that, you know, when we're coming back to you at the end of March, we're able to talk about the Alex Moffat Biden thing finally, because it seems like it's weighing on us every single week. So thanks for bringing that up, Jamie. There is one more thing that I did want to bring up before we close out for the evening, and this was brought to my attention by, you know, several of our listeners, and it's something really important to talk about. You know, out of 14 episodes, and this will be the 15th one at the end of March, this is only going to be our 5th female host of the season. And I know that, you know, there was a little bit of talk about, you know, is SNL having trouble booking some guests because of COVID restrictions? I'm not really sure, but, you know, 2 of those female hosts is going to be Kristen Wiig and Maya Rudolph. And then you have also, obviously, Regina King, Issa Rae, and Adele. But, you know, I would like to see that even out a little bit as we head towards the end of the year. You know, like, it's, you know, we talked about the struggles in the past of the history of SNL with female performers on the show. And I think that, you know, there's a lot of great female hosts out there. So I just wanted to make note of that I would love to see as we get into, you know, whoever they book for the final 5. I hope that at least we get, you know, at least 3 more female hosts, 2 or 3 more as we head towards the end of the year. Is there anything else that you guys wanted to bring up about SNL or moving forward, or this episode, before we kind of get to plugs and end our evening?
I was just going to say, John, I know you and I had talked about separately the some of the sketches that were cut after Dress, and just going back to what we were talking about earlier in terms of audience response. You know, there was a college dorm piece, there was a children's podcast, and something called Back in Town. And I don't know if it's a coincidence or not, but those of you, John, I know you've been there before. When you're in the studio, a lot of the different sets, the stages are obstructed, you know, from the audience point of view. They try to do as many as they can, you know, in that home base kind of area. The ones that were cut after Dress, for the most part, were things that were not as easily seen by the audience, you know? And so, especially when we were talking about the audience hype and vibe, you know, coincidence, maybe not, but it's just something that, you know, caused me to go, to just go, you know, what were those pieces? And maybe they just weren't as funny as the other things we saw, or maybe they just didn't play because of sometimes the position in the studio. It just, you know, I don't know.
It's interesting. It's definitely something to watch for as we continue to get word on what gets cut at Dress moving forward throughout the rest of the year. Andy, Jamie, was there anything else you want to say about the episodes, or should we call it?
I'm just really interested to see what they can do with this momentum. They've got a lot of momentum right now, and they're being forced to put a cork in it right now. And so what's that going to be like? Are they going to pop the cork in the middle of May or in the middle of March and, have it be like champagne, or is it going to be just, flat Coke? I'm real curious to see what they do with this momentum. I'm excited to see the momentum carry forward. In fact, is what I should say. That's what I'm really excited to see.
Yeah, and I think that's such a nice way to close off this discussion about these past 5 episodes. Is let's hopefully keep the momentum going. I want to thank all of our panelists, our super fans who joined us on the live stream, and all of the people who have commentated on the show the last 5 weeks. We put out about 7 shows in the last 5 weeks, and it's been a lot of fun getting to talk SNL. And I'm excited for what we're going to do moving forward. Before I get to that, let's go around the panel and talk about where people can reach out to you and certain plugs. Jamie, let me start with you because you're new to the panel and you're doing something really exciting with the SNL Hall of Fame. Would you mind telling our listeners a little bit about your podcast and where people can reach out to you?
Sure. You can find me on the socials at SNL HOF. And the SNL Hall of Fame is a place where we invite passionate fans and students of the show to make a case for the casts, hosts, musical guests, and writers that have made the magic happen in Studio 8H. Once a month, on the 15th of the month, I hope that people will tune in, download, go to YouTube, go to any of the podcast catchers that you go to for a fun, informative deep dive into the many personalities that make Saturday Night Live the most enduring comedy institution that there is at this point, right? I mean, there isn't a whole lot bigger than SNL, and so we're just having fun with this whole conceit of the Hall of Fame. We're doing a slow reveal of the ballot, and then ultimately there'll be a vote, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, and rumor has it somebody on the panel will be on an upcoming episode, so I can't wait to hear that one. Andy Hoglund, it's always great to hear from you, Andy, just to get your perspective on everything. And you write the most. I always compliment you. You write the most excellent reviews on Entertainment Weekly. Sometimes even with former alumni of the show. So can you tell people where they can take a look at that and where they can reach out to you directly?
Yeah, absolutely. Hit me up on the Twitter at SNL in Review. You can also check out my delirious writings at EW.com. The Saturday Night Live recaps, which I write in real time. So if you want someone shooting straight from the hip and giving their take as the episode is going on, I'm your guy. I in particular want to single out this most recent recap. Because I tried to double it as a little brief oral history of the 40th anniversary of Charles Rocket saying "fuck" on air during season 6.
Put a dollar in the jar.
Yeah, exactly. I hope this doesn't hurt your SEO, me cursing.
It's okay. No one listens this far, and it's all good.
But I had former cast member Matthew Lawrence, who is a great guy from Duets fame, or 90210. Some people might remember him as one of the dads on 90210. Eddie and the Cruisers, a really nice guy. He gave me his thoughts, not just on the current season, but also what he was remembering, literally being right behind Charlie Rocket during this infamous moment in SNL history. What was going through his mind? What was the backstory there? What was the dynamic within the cast? So a lot of fun quotes, I thought, not just on the current show, but also the show 40 years ago, which is one of the many reasons why I love SNL as much as I do. So please check that out.
Yeah, absolutely. James, let me give you the last word of the panel tonight. It's always a great hearing from you and getting your anecdotes about the show. So if people ever wanted to talk to you, is there a place where they can do that? And what else? What can we look forward to from hearing from you?
If I don't know why anyone would want to reach out to me, to be quite honest. I don't know that. I mean, truthfully, if you want to connect with good people who are going to talk about amazing things, I defer to the wonderful Andy and Jamie, and encourage everybody to. They're great with what they do, and again, huge fans of both of your.
We did get you
work.
on Twitter, though. I will say that.
Yeah, I'll say I'm on the Facebook, I'm on the Twitter, I'm on the Instagram. So it's not like you can't find me, but you know, yeah.
All right. All right. Well, look, it's always a pleasure hearing from you, James. Talking about what's coming up on SNL Stats. So I just want to thank all the listeners once again. If you've been listening every single week with us, you're the real ones. We really appreciate you. And we love your passion for SNL. You are the people that we make this show for. So it's great to be able to connect with all of you. Please send me your feedback as we continue to go. I'm always looking to improve the shows as we move forward, especially in this time off that we have a little bit now. I'm always working to make sure that we're putting out the best possible content for you guys. In order to never miss a show that we do, please follow us on Twitter or Instagram at SNL Stats. You can subscribe to us on any podcatcher or on YouTube to never miss a show. As for the schedule that's coming up, next week we have our superfans that are coming on in. They're kicking me out of the car. They're driving it away. Like I said, like Toons is the driving cat. They're driving right off a cliff as they continue to play some fun and games. And those shows are always really great. And then in a couple weeks, I'll be back. I'll be here with our analytics expert, Mike Murray, who has been compiling the stats from 2021. We haven't spoken to him in a while, and he's going to be here and he's going to go through all of his rankings, tell you which cast members are doing well and which aren't, objectively as best as we can. So that will be fun. And then, the week before SNL returns, we have some other surprises coming up. So I'm looking forward to sharing that as we continue to move forward. So once again, I'd like to thank James, Andy, and Jamie for joining us this week. We hope everybody enjoyed the show. Goodbye, everybody, and have a pleasant week ahead. We will see you next time.
But we're here for the numbers as well. So let's get statistical, so unpredictable here on SNL Stats.